it's just really connecting people so that we don't feel so alone, because it can feel so isolating. And so it's like letting people know they're not alone. There is a community here. I think we've experienced healing in community through different avenues and stuff. And so knowing that can happen.
Welcome to the Blueprint Breakers podcast. What is a blueprint breaker? If you live your life outside the typical traditional lifestyle blueprint, you are a blueprint breaker. We are here to start a conversation, to assemble resources, and to build a community. This podcast is for empowered women in midlife and beyond who are preparing for a powerful next era of life. My name is Amy A. Palmer. I am your host and facilitator for our conversations. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. To stay connected, up to date, and to receive all of our free resources and gifts along the way, join us at community.blueprintbreakers.com. You are not alone. And that's exactly why we are having our conversation today. I've brought back a couple of previous guests, Naomi and Carrie. They are the founders of Sonder Sisterhood. And in today's conversation, you're going to hear all about the community that they are building, specifically for women over 40 who are single and childless, not by choice. Their mission to bring us together and to give us an opportunity to connect, to heal, and to have a good time and make some friends in the process is so necessary and needed at this time. So listen to our conversation and then check them out at sondersisterhood.com. Hello, Carrie and Naomi. Good to see you both. How you doing tonight?
Doing great.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. I've had both of you on separately for this podcast, and I definitely thought a while back, I thought because of some of your collaborative efforts and some of the things that you're working on together, I thought it could be very beneficial to have open it up to talking to both of you about some of the things that you're working on together. I think Blueprint Breaker listeners will definitely resonate with what you're doing. So why don't we start simple? Why don't we start with how did the two of you meet? How did that happen?
Yeah. So I remember what was happening. Okay. So I was starting a new podcast, Singleness Extended Edition. And so I was looking for people to interview. And I think I came across Carrie's Instagram. And so I sent her a DM and was like, hey, I'm looking for people over 40 that have been single 10 or more years, or whatever that parameter was of what I was looking for at the time. And so we got on for a podcast call and then just talking afterwards, kind of sharing like the visions, that I've had of building community and, how lonely it can be in this space already. And so just through that conversation with Carrie, we're like, hey, let's kind of see what happens. And also at that time, I believe I was talking to Audrey about how can we get more people together, or how can we connect like with others more one-on-one. And so that kind of just evolved in that space. And so that's how the three of us kind of co-created Sonder Sisterhood. That's my perspective. Is it different for you, Carrie?
No, essentially Naomi slid into my DMs.
I love that.
Yeah. And, Naomi was kind of the first person to kind of reach out, and the first person that I was seeing that, was talking about this as a community. And I thought, yeah, I want in on that. This is exactly kind of even why I just started anything on Instagram. So it's been really great.
So I love that. I love that you all connected as a result of podcasting. Yeah. And I love that it was from social media. And then I know that you've also gotten together in real life too. So the friendship and the collaboration has grown and deepened over time. I think that's just really cool. One of the great benefits of podcasting and being online and that kind of thing, don't you think?
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely. I think social media can be a real cesspool, except for when it's not. And then it's been really life-changing and invaluable to be able to connect with people no matter where they are in the world. So you feel less alone in your experience.
So did you decide to launch Sonder Sisterhood like shortly after meeting, or is that something that evolved over time? Like I'm curious to find out like where the ideas started to come from and how long that took.
I don't think it was that long, honestly. I think we like had a meeting of the minds, kind of came up, was brainstorming ideas of names. And that's when we came across Sonder, and we really loved the like definition of that. And then I think we just started putting stuff out there, like didn't overthink it too much. I would think a couple months, if that.
What is the definition of Sonder?
Let me look it up.
It's a yeah.
Well, you don't need the exact definition, but a general idea.
It's a word that is used to describe that you never know what kind of journey somebody is on, right? And just love the idea that it is about bringing together people and that you never know what's going on and everybody has their own story. I think the childless not by choice community is kind of where we met. And, within being childless not by choice, there are a ton of different reasons why people fall into that, right? Or why that happens. I think most people think about people who don't have kids as either they chose it or infertility. Right. And, we came to being childless not by choice through a different lens. And not that one is harder than the other by any means. It's brutal and devastating no matter what. And it was a gap that we noticed that we're like, hey, we can fill in terms of, the single people out there may not relate to going through IVF, may not relate to being told that you have fertility problems and kind of being knocked in the side of the head by that. And we saw a gap and thought, if not us, who?
Right. I love that. Naomi, if you had to talk about the mission, the purpose of Sonder Sisterhood, tell us a little bit about it and what it is.
Yeah, I think it's just really connecting people so that we don't feel so alone, because it can feel so isolating. And so it's like letting people know they're not alone. There is a community here. I think we've experienced healing in community, like through different avenues and stuff. And so knowing that can happen, I think that's just the mission, building that community so people know that they're not alone. And yeah, that's basically what it is, I think. Healing community. So
yeah, I've definitely come to realize that, because up until I mean years ago I lived in a metro area, in the DC metro area, that had a very robust network of single professionals my age. So while being single and not having kids, I was in the minority, I'm sorry, but it didn't feel that way because there were a lot of us. And that was a good feeling. And it wasn't until leaving that area and realizing that's the exception, not the rule. Like even in cities, so it wasn't just because it was like a metro area or whatever, but that it was that women are out there feeling isolated and like they don't know where to find other women in the same boat as they are, and I've definitely seen that as being very, very prevalent. So when you talk about seeing a gap and seeing a need, it's absolutely there. I'm happy to see what you guys are doing with that. As you've been building the community, and how long have you been doing it? First of all, how long has this been going on?
Almost a year.
Okay.
Yeah, we very beginning. We started to do some things together, like at the end of last year, but then it kind of really solidified it as a group with a name called Sonder Sisterhood at the beginning of this year. So it's been fun to just kind of explore and reach out to the community and kind of identify, what are people looking for and
Mm-hmm.
how we can again, fill that gap for people.
And what have you learned as you've connected with more and more women and brought people together? What have you learned about this community?
Yeah, I think people are looking to connect with other people who have shared experience. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think anybody is expecting there to be like, oh, I'm going to enter this community and I'll never feel bad about this anymore. But
Right.
it's just seeing other people living a life that's similar to yours that isn't, you know, laced with all the media BS about what it means
Yeah.
to be a certain age, be single and childless. Whereas, instead, I can enter this group and I can see people that are maybe traveling around a lot, living, maybe they're teaching in Korea, right? Or they are traveling around to different cities. They're doing something beyond, again, how the media portrays or like the stereotypes around it, right? Bitterness, angry, chaotic, workaholic, think their life is miserable because they're in this spot. And for me, I think that's really, really helpful to see a different representation. And then just point blank, we do some things like once a month, we do like Sonder socials, we have like a book club. And so there's things where it's just like a social event on the calendar where you can show up as you are and talk about what's on your mind. And it's other women where they can relate.
Right. Right. Yeah, and there's no judgment. You don't have to filter what you're saying, and yeah, there's a lot of healing and connection and all of that comes with
Yeah.
that, for sure.
And fun. And fun. You
Right.
know, it's,
Right.
we do more than kind of talking about the experience. It's definitely a part of it, but it's also about just a group getting together
Mm-hmm.
from all over and engaging with other people, for not all people, but a lot of people who are single and childless, not by choice, we're living alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we get home from work and we're alone. And so
Mm-hmm.
this is just something I want to provide sort of like, oh, I can spruce up my social life a little bit through here too.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I was actually telling a girlfriend today about our conversation that we were going to have. And I caught myself because I started to describe Sonder Sisterhood as like a support network, but it's not a support group. I mean, it's like that's one element of it, that you can go and get support and you can help, just knowing that other people understand how you're feeling and what you're going through, even if you're not in a great place, like if you're struggling through it or whatever, it's good having that connection. But that there's a much brighter aspect to it. The social aspect, the fun aspect, the let's embrace what we have. Like you mentioned, Carrie, seeing the possibilities of how different women are navigating this season, so I love that it just covers all the various colors of what women need, for sure. So you do socials, you do book clubs, and this is all virtual. Are you going to do in person someday? Like, what are your thoughts around that?
Besides the social and book club, we also have our Sonder support, which is a 6-week program to kind of work through some of these situations that we find ourselves in. And it's pretty cool because we have people going through it a second time, because it is that community feel of, okay, now I'm at a different space and place. And what does that look like now when I talk about grief? Or what does it look like now when I talk about relationships? And so having that continued conversation with people as you live life is,
Mm-hmm.
like a nice support to have. And then we also have, like, I'm hosting a Create It Forward, and you were kind of part of that first iteration of it, of a mastermind of sorts of, okay, I'm like, I feel like I'm through the worst of my grief. And now what's next? What do I want to
Mm-hmm.
move do, and maybe I have a vision that I want to bring to life. What does that look like? And I need maybe some support or people to bounce ideas off with or collaborate with. So that's kind of some other offerings we have that I find great passion for, if you will, and stuff. So that, and then like last summer, we got together in Colorado. We're hoping to do that again this coming summer. Not really organized out, not like a retreat or anything, but just a connecting space to have fun together. And,
Right.
you know, like I enjoyed the hikes that I got to go on last summer, and you're just having fun doing what you like, but you're also having deep, meaningful conversations that you may not get in person on the regular. So having the opportunity to do that with other people. And since I'm living overseas, I always like to invite people along if it works out in their calendar to, you know, meet up wherever I am and stuff like that. And so if anybody likes to travel, that's an option as well.
Well, I definitely, Korea's on my list. So, so we may stop by at some point, Naomi, you never know.
It'll be fun. Or we can meet in Bali again, you know.
That would be good.
There.
Yes. Yes. Carrie, you could, the three of us, Bali.
That sounds amazing.
Doesn't it sound amazing?
Yeah.
Yes. Sonder Sisterhood in Bali.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about
Yeah.
this program that the program that you're offering. Has it already started, or it's about to start, or?
Yeah. So we've been doing it once a quarter. And so
Okay.
we're in the middle of that now. And it's a 6-week group where we have different topics for each group. So we talk about assumptions and expectations one week. We talk about supports one week. We talk about grief. We talk about coping. We talk about the what's next and the resources. And, you know, myself and Audrey, who's the third person of Sonder Sisterhood, we've been doing this cohort this time just because
Time zones. Yeah.
all over. And, you know, we come with some questions, but ultimately we are there to just kind of facilitate a conversation, and people bring in where they're at in that moment and they give support. And what's equally important, I think, when you're experiencing grief or when you're experiencing something that is really difficult, like being single and childless, not by choice, it's also about giving support too.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the things that we hope to highlight in that is that even at your worst, you still have something to contribute. And you have something to contribute to this community. And we want to help facilitate that. So we've been doing that. And then the holidays are really tricky and difficult for everybody, really. When you're single, childless, not by choice, the holidays just take on a little extra like burn. And so this year, for the first time, we're doing a 4-week group about support around the holidays once a week, every week in December. So again, really trying to meet the needs of the community and just offer up some support that might not otherwise exist.
That's great. That's great. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to make sure to link in the show notes to your website. And well, Sonder Sisterhood has its own website, right? With
Yep.
all the event information, and your YouTube channel, which I also think is an amazing source of resources and support and encouragement and everything else. So awesome job with that. So I'll link that as well. I have some questions around, and I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of other women that I know and some of the listeners, et cetera. And something that I face a lot when I get together, I used to face this more. When I get together with a group of women who are single and childless, not by choice, they are at varying degrees of acceptance of their circumstance, right? And varying degrees of desire to change that circumstance. So they, you know, even though they sort of have one foot into, okay, I'm going to embrace it and live my life, they still really, really, really want to find a partner, or they haven't shut the door on being a mother in some way. How does that play in? Is Sonder Sisterhood not the place for them if they're still in that mindset, or is that something that you talk about and work through and connect on as well?
Yeah, so that's my favorite part about Sonder Sisterhood, is that it's a group with people that are in various stages. Because if you're maybe a little further along the path, that's again what I was talking about. You might have some wisdom to share with somebody who's maybe not quite where you are yet. And you're doing it from a place of shared experience. And sometimes we're able to hear things and absorb things a little bit differently. And the flip side is, right, if I'm really early in the grief and I'm thinking, I can't imagine what my life will look like because I don't see what my life could look like in a good way anywhere else. You're able to then see that for the person, the other people in the group. I think most of us in the group haven't shut the door on like not having a partner. We just haven't for a while. Or not having a partner being married is a reason related to the childlessness. I think it's it's interesting, right? So like sometimes when you like run like therapy groups, having a multi-generational group can be really, really valuable, right? So we can learn from people in different perspectives. And I think while it certainly can be multi-generational, but it's people in different seasons or different walks of the grief, I think it's really valuable. I would strongly encourage people to reach out and seek support no matter where they are. And just because somebody is further along and quote unquote sort of like accepting it, it doesn't mean that they don't have dips. It doesn't mean that
that would be me. Right. I'm on the other side, but every once in a while it's like, whoa.
I know. I do think most of the women in our group that I'm aware of are in a scenario in which, in terms of having a child, isn't going to happen for whatever reason.
Okay.
So I don't think people are contemplating it. They could be, and I don't know it.
Yeah, because I was curious about that. Like, do the women want to talk about, well, how do we meet people at our age? Or, like, do they want to bond on that topic, or are they getting that elsewhere? Do they seem to want that from the group or not really?
That hasn't come up as much. It's more along the lines of, if it happens, great. And if it doesn't happen, I am currently cultivating these other areas of my life. And it doesn't mean that I wouldn't love to have a partner in the future, but I'm going to start cultivating these other areas of my life that are about who I am as a whole person versus it being a group that's more along relationship coaching. It's more about you're enough as you are.
Yeah.
And so let's cultivate who we are as a person.
Yeah. Yeah. And that really resonates with me too, because that's the piece that's hard to find out there. It's hard to find women who are ready to look at it like that and ready to figure out what their path is, and accepting the fact that they are enough and they are fully worthy just as they are.
Yes.
So yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Naomi, what are your hopes for the future? I mean, and that's a big question. I mean, like, I'm thinking on many levels. For the two of you, I'd love to hear sort of like your hopes for the future as it stands with Sonder Sisterhood, as it stands with us as a community of single and childless not by choice. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I haven't really thought about like too much in the future, just that it continues to provide a safe place for people to come, that are walking a similar journey. And so just providing resources and opportunities for them to do that. I hope that continues. And like Carrie kind of mentioned before, like time differences are a challenge. And yet I'm like, well, then we're more global. So hopefully we can hit our friends in Australia and different places like that. So maybe, expanding the network and expanding the opportunities and other collaborations that might come along our path, like looking at those. And not holding too tightly, like, no, we started this and it's ours, but more like we have an awesome community out there and we can all contribute and support each other through what we're building and different ways we can do that. So that's kind of what I see. Just how can we also let people know that we're out there, right? That's part of, any grassroots thing. It's like, how do we get our name out there? How do we reach the people that we're trying to reach? And so continuing to figure that out, and having fun with it too, I think is important, because
Agree.
I don't want to be bogged down by the whatever quote unquote business side of things, or that stuff, but how can we continue to build it out and stuff? So that's where I see it going. I don't know.
Anything to add to that, Carrie, or any different perspective?
Yeah, like practically, I would love for us to be able to do some like in-person things occasionally as well, where maybe like Naomi was talking about before, we come together in person just to like also have that as an option. And I think the vision is, if somebody is single, being single and childless, not by choice, can be very isolating, and you can feel very misunderstood and unseen in multiple areas of life, not just kind of the family side of things, right? And so I want Sonder Sisterhood to be a place where when somebody's having a really crappy day or month or a series of months, or somebody's feeling like, I'm feeling better, I want to like invest in this community. I want people to be able to be like, oh, I'll go to Sonder Sisterhood, because I know that that's a group where people are coming together to process the grief and talk about the grief, but then also talking about what is the next step.
Yes. Yes. I think you nailed it. I mean, that's key, being there for each other and then looking ahead and where do we go from here? Yeah. And so the activist part of me, I want this demographic of women to be seen and to be more understood and to be heard. And I don't want to be a cautionary tale. We're not a cautionary tale. We're not to be pitied. We are no less and no more happy or sad than anyone else on any other particular lifestyle. And I feel like that's something that I think all three of us are working on, getting that mission out there, and groups like Sonder Sisterhood, I think, just helps to amplify it and get it out there and make that connection. Hopefully we can get there in time for like the next, maybe Gen Z. We'll have a better time. Or whatever comes after Gen Z. I don't know how long.
Gen Z is not shy. So
yeah.
we may be following
that's
them
true,
shortly.
but right. And I get a lot of hope when I hear how they frame things, how they talk about things, but then every once in a while, some of the old conditioning, some of the other old attitudes that we're trying to get rid of pop up. So it just tells me that we just got to keep at it and keep at it. You were going to say something, Carrie.
Yeah, I was going to say, because that conditioning that you're talking about, that is the beginning of time that's been around, just in different iterations, right? Particularly when we're talking about women in particular and partnership, and then childlessness. Now, there's always been women who are single and childless since the beginning of time as well. But the way they're viewed isn't all that sweet, right? And the individual conditioning, right, starts at an extremely young age. And I do think there's something about maybe being single or not having kids when you're 25. That's a very different experience when you're 45.
Absolutely.
And I think, the finality of something hits you like a ton of bricks. And to kind of go back to the previous question, that's where I hope we can swoop in and be like, here's a safe place to land.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap, any other thoughts or anything that you'd like to share with the audience, especially if no matter what season the listener may be in regarding this particular topic, any thoughts or recommendations for them?
One thing I would say is just in terms of, if you are childless, not by choice, and you're currently single, this is a group for you. If you don't want to be single, it doesn't mean you can't come into this group. This isn't a group where it's like, oh, I've decided I'm going to be single for the rest of my life, even though it's not my choice. It's just the status, and it is a unique experience that's different than somebody who is childless, going through infertility, what have you. It's not hard or easier. It's just different. And we really want people to know that if you are in this space, no matter what you're seeing around you, you're enough as you are, and you're not alone, and community is healing.
Love
and
that.
we're fun. Come check it out. It's low risk.
How about you, Naomi? Anything else to add?
No, I think that's kind of it, just really want to encourage everybody that this resonates with, that you find that you're in this space and place of like, wow, life hasn't turned out as I thought it would, but I know there's something on the other side, and there's more than my relationship status and whether I have kids or not, just to come join us and check us out. And if we're not a good fit, we have other resources and people that we can point you to as well. And so we just want people to get connected so they don't feel alone. We just want to kind of help foster that in any way we can.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Naomi, for being here. And thank you so much for building this community and launching this and being such a great source of support for women. So thank you so much for everything.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me for today's episode of the Blueprint Breakers podcast. You are not alone. Thank you to Naomi and Carrie for launching such an impactful community. Please be sure to check them out at sondersisterhood.com. That's Sonder, S-O-N-D-E-R, sisterhood.com. And for you, the listener, thank you. Thank you for leaving 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. And thank you for sharing this episode with your friends. If you are not yet a member of our Blueprint Breakers Insiders community, remember to join us at community.blueprintbreakers.com. That's community.blueprintbreakers.com. Have a great week. Keep on breaking those blueprints and writing your own.